Hey everyone, hope you enjoy our presentation. I'd suggest you put down your frindles and just relax. What? Frindle? It's a word that might not mean anything to you, but it meant something to Nick, a character in Andrew Clement's book, Frindle. To Nick, and eventually a lot of other people, frindle meant pen. Nick realized something all linguists know. Words are not inherent. Something like a pen could have been named something different altogether. Nick's idea sparks a lot more questions, like why do new words stick?
In Nick's world, people thought the word frindle was fun, so they used it. Is this likely to happen in real life? Alan Metcalf, an American linguist, would say no.
Words with the potential to be fun, like schmoozoisie, meaning the class of people who earn their living by talk, don't always stick.
So what determines if a word will stick around or not? Is it whether or not the word names something that doesn't already have a name? Maybe not. Even words that are coined to fill a gap in the lexicon, like sylvanshine, the sparkle of dew on trees at night, don't always stick. So then, what do the experts say are the reasons a word sticks around? Pick up your frindles, you're gonna want to write this down. Alan Metcalf postulates 5 criteria a word must meet to be successfully adopted into the lexicon of a language.
He called these criteria fudge: frequency, unobtrusiveness, diversity, generation, and endurance. Frequency refers to how often the word is used and by how many people. Unobtrusiveness is how obviously different the word is from the pre-existing lexicon. Often you can't tell that a successful new word is different at all. Diversity refers to the diversity of both users and situations in which a word is used. A word is going to be more successful if it can be used by people from many different walks of life, like business people, hipsters, and housewives. Generation refers to the ability of a potential new word to create more new words. And finally, endurance is whether a word can be relevant for a long period of time.
Let's apply these criteria to frindle. First, frequency. Though frindle was used by many people in Nick's circle of influence, they were mainly contained to the 6th grade class. Most of the adults thought frindle was silly. Unobtrusiveness. Frindle follows all the phonetic laws in English. It sounds like it could be a real word. It even has a similar form to pre-existing words like spindle, kindle, swindle, and dwindle. Diversity. As we saw with frequency, frindle was used primarily by students. However, it did eventually get used by everyone, although how this transition took place is not clear.
Next, generation. In the book, frindle does not generate any new lexical items. However, it could have generated new words in theory. This may have been seen if the population decided that writing with a pen was called frindling. Hey, what you doing? Oh, I'm frindling a letter to Grandma. This extension from noun to verb would have guaranteed frindle's existence in the lexicon for a long time. However, as writing is a frequent activity, it would be quite difficult to replace the term. Finally, the endurance criterion. The word frindle represents a concept that is likely to be around for a long time. If it were to enter the lexicon and replace pen completely, it would likely not fall out of use anytime soon. However, for this very reason, it's pretty unlikely that frindle would manage to enter the lexicon in the first place. By Metcalf's fudge analysis, it is pretty clear that frindle wouldn't have actually been a successful word.
However, Metcalf isn't the only expert in the field of word coining. Linguist Gordon Kelmer also has some suggestions as to what might influence a word's success or failure. Kelmer specifies that predicting new words and defining potential new words are different things. He says that while we can make educated guesses about potential words, it's a lot more difficult to actually say what new words would be.
Kelmer separates his criteria into 5 basic areas: semantic, phonological, morphological, grammatic, and other. Under each basic area, there are a couple more specific criteria which are highlighted in the handout, including things like how transparent the word is, whether there are parallels in the language, and the connotation the word has. There are a total of 13 criteria, which seems like a lot, however, there is a lot of overlap. Not only does Kelmer separate it into so many criteria for judging potential words, but he also gives them rankings. Having certain criteria can be extremely good for a word's potential, while having other criteria isn't always as important.
Kelmer gives an important ranking, or a 3, to M1, morphological parallels, and M3, productive affix. Fairly important, given a score of 2, are M4, compatible affixes, O1, prestigious or exotic connotations, and O3, humorous. Only mildly important, earning a score of 1, are S1, semantic parallels, and O2, the conciseness of the word. The presence of the rest don't have an effect on the potentiality of a word, and thus score a 0.
Similarly, not having certain criteria can range from detrimental to the word potential to having very little effect. When the absence is detrimental to a word's potential, they are said to score a 3. This includes PH1, phonological parallels, M2, following morphological principles, G1, graphematic parallels. Having a slight negative effect scores a 1. And these criteria are S1, semantic parallels, S2, transparency, PH2, ease of pronunciation, M1, morphological parallels, M3, product affix, M4, compatibility between affix and stem, and G2, agrees with spelling and pronunciation. The remaining 3's absence don't affect the word's potential, and thus score a 0.
With all these rankings, we can see that Frindle would be a highly potential word because it meets a number of important morphological, phonological, and graphemic conditions in that it can be inflected with common patterns like plural S and gerund ing, shares phonological structure with existing English words such as dwindle and spindle, and finally its spelling agrees with its pronunciation.
Gilmer also suggests 3 situations that allow for a potential word to become a new word. These are semantic need, backing by the media, and what is in fashion. Though there was no semantic need in the case of Frindle, Nick's coined word got a lot of media attention and became a very cool thing. If these 2 forces had been strong enough, it is actually possible that Frindle could have replaced pen in the lexicon.
Words, it's tough to say whether a word like Frindle would succeed or not. Even today, linguists make predictions about the best new words and what they are, and even then, their choices often fall out of usage. Like language in general, there seems to be lots of exceptions to the rules. Though Nick was correct in his observation that words aren't inherent, language and language change are inherent. Given this natural predisposition for change, is there a way that we will ever predict a language change? Maybe budding linguists like Nick will be able to tell us one day.